This list shouldn't have taken this long to make. But it's here now, so let's finally talk about what is arguably, in my opinion, Nintendo's best mobile game yet. Yes, even better than Fire Emblem Heroes. Dragalia Lost. I can't tell you just how much this game has eaten away at my free time. And by free time, I mean the time I've spent procrastinating while working on other things. I'm sorry, but I can't help it. The gameplay is just too much fun, the cast of characters is so colorful, and the main campaign and event stories are surprisingly pretty engaging. But today, I'm focusing on the former, specifically the playable adventurers. Hard to believe it's been a little over a year and a half since the game first launched. So needless to say, there are a lot of adventurers that released in this 1.5-year time span. And with 5 elements, 8 weapon types, and a ton of unique skills and abilities to play around with, there's much variety to go around. So narrowing it down to just my 10 favorites was incredibly difficult. But here I am. Now, it should go without saying, Dragalia Lost is a gacha game, so I don't have every single adventurer ever released. As such, I'm basing this on the adventurers I've managed to obtain and enjoyed using the most. With that said, I am laying down some ground rules for my list. First, I really wanted to make this list as current as possible upon release. Of course, more adventurers got added during production. So, I've decided that this list will not feature adventurers released past the second Fire Emblem Heroes crossover event. And my last rule, if an adventurer I like has multiple versions, I'm only going with my favorite alt. Anyway, with all that taken care of, let the chaos commence! Man, it was tough nailing down some of the spots on this list, including 10th place. I had so many potential contenders for various spots on the list that I could have switched around and been content with. Then new adventurers kept getting added, I managed to summon those new adventurers only for me to really like some of those new adventurers, causing entries to get moved around even more. It was just freaking nuts! But I've made my decisions, and at 10th place, bring in the rat!
Let's all just chill.
Once again, Dragalia Lost rang in the new year with even more visitors from Hinamoto, and since 2020 is the year of the rat, leading the charge is the leader of the Mouse Clan, Mitsuhide. I honestly didn't expect to like Mitsuhide as much as I did, considering she's a dagger adventurer. I mean, I like daggers, but for the most part, daggers aren't as strong as most other close-range melee weapon types in Dragalia Lost. But Mitsuhide is one of the big exceptions, and by big exception, I mean she's a meta-defining adventurer who you will see in pretty much any run of High Zodiac. Her playstyle focuses around having a huge combo count to take advantage of the effects of some of her skills and abilities. Daggers have the nice benefit of homing in on targets and attacking pretty fast, so racking up a combo count is a piece of cake. With her flurry strength, Mitsuhide gains a sizable 20% strength buff based on her combo count, and her Calamity Drop skill adds bonus damage based on her combo count, in addition to briefly increasing her attack rate. That's pretty great, but wait, it gets better. Her Mouse's Revenge skill is able to inflict paralysis, and since she has a built-in Paralysis Punisher ability, she's gonna be dealing even more damage to paralyzed foes. On top of that, Mouse's Revenge is also a multi-hit skill attack, which helps with Mitsuhide's combo count. So if you combine all of that from Mouse's Revenge with the combo count effects I just mentioned, Mitsuhide's damage output becomes insane. Slap on a critical rate co-ability and 100% curse res, and, well, you're done. And all of this coming from someone who just wants to take a nap all day. Though I guess if you're gonna be a leader of one of the 12 worm clans of Hinamoto, there's no room for being a slouch on the battlefield, is there? Sadly, she's a limited time adventurer, so her accessibility isn't very high. But I'm sure they're gonna rerun her summon showcase again later in 2020, like what they did with the first New Year's limited adventurers in 2019. So don't worry too much if you missed out the first time, but if you manage to summon her, she'll be a great asset to any light team.
I won't sacrifice my culinary career for anyone.
I managed to summon both Valerio and Mitsuba, and they're both just so much fun to play thanks to their unique stance gimmick. It was hard for me to decide which one I liked more, but I ultimately went with Mitsuba because, while Valerio is a fantastic adventurer, he's a bit more complicated. Each of their stances does drastically different things to each of their skills. Valerio has 3 stances, effectively giving him 6 different skills, which is a lot to keep track of. Mitsuba, on the other hand, only has 2 stances, and the effects are a bit more straightforward. Plus, I like daggers. Sure, they aren't as powerful as other melee weapon types, but they attack very fast and rack up damage very quickly. Mitsuba's 2 stances are Sashimi Stance and Tempura Stance. Applicable to both Mitsuba and Valerio, each of their stances change how their normal attacks work if their combo count reaches 20 or more. but this is easier to pull off for a dagger type like Mitsuba, and her combo time +4 ability helps maintain the combo and the new attack pattern. In addition, her Flurry Strength ability will grant her a strength buff with the high combo count. That's great and all, but what about those stance effects on her skills? Chef's Special is a multi-hit skill attack, so great for racking up a combo count, that inflicts the new periodic damage affliction Frostbite in Sashimi stance and grants Frostbite Punisher in Tempura stance. Chef's Special charges up really fast thanks to its low skill point cost, and with Tempura stance's normal attacks granting more skill point gain than Sashimi stance, you'll want to inflict Frostbite with Sashimi stance, switch to Tempura stance, charge up, and then use Chef's Special again to benefit from Frostbite Punisher before Frostbite wears off. That's a fantastic setup, and once we get that Frostbite Punisher Wormprint and or Dragon, ba-bing! Ba-bing! Her second skill, Hearty Helping, while having a long charge-up time, provides team-wide support, granting the whole team a brief critical rate buff and +2 inspiration in Sashimi stance, and a brief 50% critical damage increase and +3 inspiration in Tempura stance. Very reminiscent of another adventurer we'll see later. And once that inspiration reaches 5, you're granted guaranteed critical damage for the next attacking skill. Yeah, this was a lot to explain, but as you can see, there's a lot of complexity to how Mitsuba plays. And really, what can I say? She's an incredible adventurer with a unique gimmick, potent Frostbite setup, and great critical rate and damage support. If this is the route they're going with future adventurers, I'm very curious to see what other kinds of unique mechanics they can implement. Though, let's just hope they don't make them OP and power creep the rest of the cast. A toast to my big mouth. You know, I'm not the biggest player of axe adventurers. They're probably my least played close-range weapon type. They aren't bad, but they just aren't my cup of tea, and I never bothered to try playing as one of them seriously. Until...
My weapons will lead us to victory!
And of course, my favorite axe adventurer to use just so happens to be one of the best flame adventurers in the game. Sure, we've gotten better flame options for high difficulty content over time, but that doesn't mean Ramona should be overlooked. That fantastic DPS of hers is all thanks to the good synergy from her skill 1 and first ability. Forge Buster deals damage to surrounding enemies, and continually tapping the screen will allow her to have up to 6 additional blows. Oh, and you can change the direction of these extra attacks. And when you factor in her Prime Strength ability, which briefly increases the currently controlled adventurer's strength every time their skill 1 is fully charged, yeah, this is a dangerous skill ability combo. And with how quick it is to charge Forge Buster thanks to its low skill point cost, you'll be reaping the effects of Prime Strength very often. Her skill 2, Smith's Shield, is... not the best. It increases defense by 25% for 15 seconds. But while this does have good synergy with her other ability, Strength Double Buff, which increases strength every time a defense buff is applied, Smith's Shield's skill point cost is incredibly high. And since axe adventurers take a long time to charge up skills than other weapon types, chances are you'll finish the quest before you even activate this skill. But I guess if the skill point cost was less for Smith's Shield, Ramona might be kinda busted. Her only other downside, if you can even call it a downside, is her 100% sleep res, which is good for Volk, but not High Midgard Sormer. And even then, even if there are other better options to combat High Midgard Sormer, that DPS of hers is still great, and makes her a good choice for high difficulty content. All you need is a healer that can cure stun, and she's all good to go. Ramona's been here since the beginning as the game's blacksmith for crafting weapons. It took a while for her to become playable, but once she finally decided to step out of the workshop and onto the battlefield, she sure brought that hammer down. Yes, I did spend money to do a dream summon to get this adventurer, and I don't regret it.
So, you are my soulmate.
I unfortunately didn't get Gala Alex during hers, Luca's, or even Alex's Gala showcases, so sadly, I can't consider her for the list. That just leaves Alex 3 other versions, Vanilla, Halloween, and Wedding. All 3 are great, but if I had to choose one, I'd go with Wedding. Being a 5-star windsword, Wedding Alex's only competition at the moment is Gala Rancel. Both are fantastic, but Wedding Alex is seen as the superior of the two. For one, she's a non-Gala adventurer in the normal summoning pool, so she's easier to obtain. Second, like her vanilla form, Wedding Alex's strengths lie in her support capabilities. Her skill 1, Sacred Union, deals damage and creates a 10-second buff zone that gradually heals yours and your allies' HP when inside the buff zone. Just yet another reason why healers aren't used that much in this game. Though I do think that needs to change at some point. Anyway, her skill 2, Wedding Bell, deals damage and creates a 10-second debuff zone that lowers enemies' defense by 50% as long as enemies remain in the debuff zone, further aiding team-wide DPS. Sadly, this debuff zone is very small, especially when compared to the debuff zone of recent adventurer Valentine's Melody, but hey, it gets the job done. And again, she's a sword adventurer, so despite her being a support type, her DPS output is pretty good, and Wedding Bell makes it even better. And like Ramona, she's also packing Strength Double Buff, which means more strength when given a defense buff. Better get used to seeing Wedding Elsan teamed up with Noelle a lot thanks to Noelle's prime defense. Unless Tobias is around because he and Ellie are such good buddies. And thanks to her skill haste plus 8%, Wedding Ellie's skill attacks will appear to support the team very frequently. Man, for someone who said she had no need for a fancy dress, she sure does know how to bring down the pain while wearing one. Now if only Udin could recognize Elisan's feelings for him, cause she doesn't do a good job at hiding it.
Oh, if only I could be with him. Ah! Such wildly inappropriate thoughts.
I don't care how weak she is, she's a lot of fun to use.
Hi, I'm Tiki. I'd love to play with you all.
Tiki was the only adventurer from the Kindred Ties summon showcases that I was able to summon. And yeah, she had a bit of a rocky start with all the bugs that she had upon release, but even with the bugs, I still found her pretty enjoyable. Let's get the obvious out of the way. Tiki's big, unique meta-defining thing, at least for now, is her standard attack damage co-ability, which increases the power of standard attacks for the whole team. This is a fantastic perk to have. But unfortunately, Tiki is a limited time adventurer, so until they decide to put this co-ability on another adventurer down the line, this one will remain very elusive until they decide to rerun the Kindred Ties event, which they probably will. But with such a powerful co-ability, you'd think this would make Tiki's standard attacks very strong, right? Well, that leads us into what is quite possibly Tiki's biggest flaw. Her normal attacks in human form are absolute weak sauce. And despite being a dagger adventurer, her normal attacks work nothing like a dagger. They aren't fast, and they don't home in on enemies. The most damage you'll be dealing in human form will be from her skill 1 Divine Wings. And while it does charge up pretty quickly, it's still not a whole lot of damage. So the main goal for Tiki in her human form is to charge up her unique Divine Dragon Gauge, which her skills in human form greatly help with this. Divine Wings being an attack skill, and the other skill, Dragon Valor, only increases the gauge and does no damage. The Divine Dragon Gauge is very similar to the Dragon Drive gauge seen on adventurers like Aldred, Belina, and Urius, but unlike those three, Tiki actually transforms into a dragon when activating the gauge. Upon transformation, Tiki's skills become two new skills, Breath of Fog, which inflicts Frostbite, and Divine Dragon Blow, which deals extra damage on frostbitten foes. And since Tiki has a built-in Frostbite Punisher ability, this skill will deal a lot of damage. Both skills will be ready to use upon shapeshifting. So, go to town. What makes Tiki so much fun is just how long she can stay in dragon form. Though the gauge slowly depletes over time once activated, each attack will actually increase the gauge a little, extending your time in dragon form for a little bit longer. Not only that, but her skills in dragon form will charge up like they were adventurer skills. So yeah, she's gonna be activating them often. However, despite taking reduced damage while in dragon form, Tiki is not invincible and will take damage to her HP bar rather than the gauge like normal shapeshifts. So don't expect to use her to tank purple attacks. Also, don't expect things like Dragon's Claws and Dragon Time to work on Tiki, because they don't. Despite the downsides, this adorable little Manakete is still a lot of fun. She may not be the strongest out there, but staying in dragon form for a long time is a very satisfying thing. Not alone on that, that's for sure.
これがレクイエムだ。
I will forge the path with this magic.
Ah, Gala Cleo. Dragalia fans watching this video probably saw this one coming. Now, for those unfamiliar, Gala adventurers are exceptionally powerful adventurers that provide unique gameplay gimmicks that no other adventurer has. So what is Gala Cleo's gimmick? Oh, it's nothing special, it's just she is this game's meta! Well, until Gala Alex showed up to share the space with her, but even then, Gala Cleo is still pretty ridiculous. How, you may ask? Well, let's take a look. A powerful skill 1 with a huge blast range that targets more enemies with repeated use of the skill. An insane skill 2 that initially debuffs enemies' defense for 20 seconds, aiding DPS, with an additional decrease to enemy strength, as well as healing your allies with repeated use of the skill. A dangerous ability that creates a buff zone that grants a huge 25% strength increase to all adventurers inside the buff zone for 10 seconds upon using a Force Strike after using her skill 1, further aiding DPS. Oh, and she has 100% skill prep, so all of this is ready to go at the start of a quest. Also, she's a wand adventurer, which means the skill damage from her already powerful skills is boosted even more. Do you see just how ridiculous she is? She's so powerful that she's even recommended for other content of other elements that aren't just light. It's no wonder recommending other adventurers over Gala Cleo is difficult if you already managed to summon her. She's just that good of a utility, and I really do enjoy just unleashing this tremendous power of hers and dealing crazy amounts of damage on everything. So why isn't she at the top of this list? Well, for one, while I enjoy using wand adventurers, I wouldn't say wands are my favorite weapon type in the game. They do take a bit of startup time to get their attacks going, as opposed to close range melee weapons that can just attack immediately. Not to mention their force strikes are very awkward to use. And two, I just enjoy using these next adventurers more. But Gala Cleo's insane busted power that is influencing the meta to this day, even with Gala Alex being released, is hard for me to ignore. And it's later.
I fight to fulfill my promise.
I miraculously got him at the last minute. After trying him out, I couldn't leave him off the list. Wielding the weapon of his new friend, the android Mascula, Luca takes it to the battlefield to stop all conflict and achieve harmony with all races. Glad to see they're finally showing love to a character that was kinda pushed aside for others within the main cast. And Galaluca is a great addition to any light team. Why? Well, for starters, he's a blade adventurer, so that means strength co-ability. You want this. Of course, being a Gala adventurer means he's also got a unique gimmick. In Galaluca's case, it's crits for days! Thanks to his ability Connecting Call, his crit rate increases immensely depending on how many buffs with different icons Galaluca currently has granted on him. The ability also grants him one of 3 buffs with unique icons that further increase crit rate. If his combo count is 15 or more, then his Flurry Devastation ability grants him even more crit rate. Got hit by a curse-afflicting attack? Sorry enemies, he's completely immune to curse afflictions. But thanks for the additional crit rate if your attack would inflict curse. And if you use his skill 1, Shining Slash, while having a bunch of buffs with different icons applied to him, you guessed it, more crit rate! Oh, and his skill 2, Brilliant Booster, grants a gargantuan 80% crit damage for 10 seconds. And with all of these crit rate increases, Luca's gonna destroy those Diurnell scumbags and any other opposing force to Kingdom Come. Yeah, this is a major departure from the typical strength or skill damage focus that most players are used to, but it's surprisingly effective. So nice to see an adventurer break from the norm and offer a unique playstyle that can thrive alongside the usual meta tactics. I mean, that's all Luca ever wanted, for everyone to come together. Now, about Gala Alex sharing the space.
Whatever happens, I will keep Elisande safe.
Wow. Just wow. As if the shadow element wasn't already busted enough. The best way I can describe Gala Alex is spammy. Like, if you enjoy going to town and spamming everything, this is the adventurer for you. Though she's a sword adventurer, Gala Alex has unique sword attacks unlike all other sword adventurers at the moment. These attacks are very reminiscent of daggers, which makes sense because Vanilla Alex is a dagger user. The attacks are powerful and fast, very useful to go along with her gimmick, the Skill Reservoir, a special gauge that fills up with each successful normal attack and readies both of her skills when there's at least one level of the gauge filled in the reservoir. The gauge caps at 3, and since using a skill consumes 1 level, you can use 3 skills at once. That's freaking nuts! But wait, it gets even nuttier, and kinda complicated to explain. Upon using one of her natural skills, the skill's frame will glow blue for a brief time, indicating you can perform a skill chain, in which case, using the skill again during this window will do bonus damage after the main attack, and increase damage for both cases depending on the enemy's condition. See what I mean? Gala Alex's kit encourages spamming special attacks. Both of Gala Alex's skills, Crisis Edge and Umbral Erasure, essentially do the same thing, except Crisis Edge briefly reduces defense normally, and increases damage on foes which reduce defense during a skill chain, and Umbral Erasure inflicts poison normally, and increases damage on poisoned foes during a skill chain. And if the foe is in break state and or has a buff, it's possible to skill chain into the other skill rather than the same skill. Doing so will cause foes in break state to take extra damage and increase damage, or cause foes with a buff to have their buff removed and increase damage if reduced defense or poison is present on the foe, depending on the skill used. This is all on top of the bonus damage after the main attack. Though if the foe has a buff and is in break state, the buff condition takes priority. And with Gala Alex having both reduced defense and Poison Punisher as natural abilities, as well as poison equals user strength plus 13% for her chain kill ability, yeah, she deals an absurd amount of damage to the point where she has the most individual DPS out of any other adventurer in the Shadow element. Yes, even more than Gala Cleo. Yeah, this is a very complicated kit to comprehend, but once you try it out, it's a lot of fun to just absolutely destroy everything. That's some resolve you got there, Alex, to protect everyone. He grew up so fast, and I'm so proud of him.
I will fulfill my pact with the dragons.
It wouldn't be a Dragalia Lost video involving characters without mentioning the main characters somewhere in the video. Both his vanilla and Gala versions are fantastic adventurers, especially Vanilla Udin, who got a mana spiral at the start of 2020 that gave him a significant power boost. But even before he got it, Vanilla Udin was still a decent adventurer in his own right. Not the best, but still a worthwhile investment. But I'm giving this one to Gala Udin for being both a powerhouse and an awesome utility similar to Gala Cleo. I mean, he isn't busted like Gala Cleo, but he's definitely up there. For one, he's a natural 5-star sword adventurer, so DPS is excellent. But his big claim to fame is his skill 1, Rising Circlet. It deals damage and creates a 10-second buff zone that increases strength by 20% while being inside the buff zone. Already, you can see the similarities to Gala Cleo. And while the buff is only slightly less than Gala Cleo's, the buff zone is huge! His second skill, Exalted Glory, further aids support. It can inflict paralysis, so Paralysis Punisher shenanigans, briefly increases the whole team's strength, and provides a one-use shield. That is outstanding support from both skill attacks alone. Again, he's not as busted as Gala Cleo, but if you have him, use him. He's great. The rest of his kit revolves around him being in dragon form for a long time, which for most in the community can be seen as a blessing or a curse. There are very good light dragons to give Udin, but sometimes staying in dragon form for too long may hinder DPS. I can understand these concerns, but transforming into dragon form just might be the thing that keeps you alive in more difficult content like Advanced Dragon Trials. Also, and I feel most people forget this, but you are briefly invincible while in dragon form, so having that invincibility time extended I can only see as a plus. And thanks to Gala Udin's Dragon Light's Resolve ability and his Shapeshifting Boost 8 Go ability, his attack rate and damage in dragon form is even better than it would be. Also, 100% curse and poison res. Rest in pieces, Alphonse! Still love you though. Our Dragon Blood Prince has come a long way and suffered so much. And now that he bears the light of Alberius the Founder, all this power he's gained is the embodiment of his resolve. Resolve to take back what he has lost, and he's not holding back. Now can we please put him in Smash Brothers? He's my most wanted character right now. Say what you will about Dragalia Lost, the game's still kicking, and if Udin's gonna be sitting here chilling with the likes of Marth, Mega Man, and Rathlos in his own universe, then let's have him chilling in the ultimate gaming crossover to ever exist! Yep, I'm finally doing one of these. Buckle up, because there's a lot of them. Currently my favorite healer in the game thanks to her amazing health steal effect. Two great support Lance Adventurers of Water and Light respectively. Man, Elisande sure loves to support. Her crit damage co-ability is next to useless without a decent source of crit rate, and her skill point cost to fill her skill gauges is very high, but I still found her to be at least a fun adventurer to use from time to time, and that defense debuff zone is pretty nice. While not the best in the game, he's definitely a very fun adventurer to play as, well with him playing like he was ripped straight out of his games, and that ×3 bleeding is pretty nice too. This was the hard cut for me. I really like Alphonse as a character and really enjoy how he was implemented into Dragalia Lost. The mana spiral definitely made him stronger, but not enough to make him meta-defining. Ooh, this was another hard cut. He was originally going to be around 7th or 8th place, but when playing him to get footage, he just wasn't as fun to me as he was before. Still great though. Hey, just because I said his kit was complicated doesn't mean I don't enjoy playing as him. He has the stance gimmick, and it's pretty fun just like Mitsuba. Not a complete replacement of Wedding Ellie, since Wedding Ellie still has her healing buff zone, but that giant enemy defense reducing debuff zone and her poison shenanigans are a welcome addition to any win team. All wand adventurers of various elements that practically do the same thing, buff strength. I really enjoy using them for this. A very powerful wind blade, but him staying in place due to his first skill just isn't my thing. And lastly, Hey, I said Vanilla Udin was still pretty good, despite him being the very first adventurer you get in the game. But that mana spiral of his definitely made him much, much stronger. If you know me or have been following me on Twitter, you probably know who number 1 is. But to those who don't follow me on Twitter, allow me to explain. My favorite character in Dragalia Lost is Mim, aka Brunhilde the Flameworm. She started out as this stubborn, grumpy fire dragon, but once she assumed a human form as Mim, it was nothing but one Mim shenanigan after another, and she never ceased being so hilarious. She essentially became the game's comic relief character, and an instant fan favorite for her hilarity and other reasons. So, with Mim being a part of the main cast and gaining big popularity, she was going to be a playable adventurer one way or the other, despite her original form being one of the equipable Great Worm dragons. And currently, she has 2 versions, Gala and Halloween. And since Halloween Mim is already in the honorable mentions, there's only one option left.
I'll show you the true nature of a dragon.
Ever since I managed to summon her on her debut showcase, Gala Mim has been the one adventurer I've been playing almost non-stop. Then again, she's my favorite character in the game, so what did you expect? Consider her my main in this game. Mim joined the roster as a Flame Lance. While most players today usually give the Lance spot on Flame teams to Emma for her strength buff skill, I personally prefer Gala Mim to Emma thanks to Mim's sheer power and unique gimmick. Speaking of, Gala Mim's gimmick is focused on shape-shifting into dragon form as much as possible. You know, kinda makes sense what with her being a dragon and all. To help with the shape-shifting, her skill 1, Dragon Claw, slightly increases the dragon gauge if the attack connects. Now, usually, you'll want to save your dragon form transformation for attacks that you might not be able to avoid, usually the unavoidable purple attacks. But in the case of Gala Mim, you want her to shapeshift as soon as possible. Why? Because of all the really good perks she gets when she transforms. Gala Mim is the first adventurer to have a set-in-stone shapeshift form, which is in this case Brunhilde. But despite not being able to shapeshift into the other dragons, she can still benefit from the abilities of the dragon equipped to her. Thanks to her first ability, Flameworm's Nature, when she shapeshifts for the first time in a quest, Mim gains a permanent strength increase, and her skill 2, Flames of Passion, becomes much stronger than it normally is. In addition, Gala Mim gained Dragon Claws for her Chain Co ability. So if there's a flame-attuned ally on the team, she gains yet another permanent strength increase after shapeshifting. On her second transformation onwards, she transforms into her stronger High Dragon form with an increased attack rate while in dragon form. Combine that with her Dragon Time ability, she'll be in dragon form for much longer than usual. Her last ability, Flameworm's Defiance, increases Dragon Claw's skill gauge by 50% if she's hit with an attack that would stun her. And both Flameworm's Nature and Flameworm's Defiance give Gala Mim a 100% resistance to stun and burning? Okay, I guess that makes sense considering she's the Flame Worm, but there are no wind element bosses that inflict burn, at least not now anyway, so this resistance is a bit of an odd choice. But I guess if you want to pit her against enemies that can inflict burn, she's there as an option. Looking at Gala Mim as a full package, she's got tools to help her transform a lot sooner, gains a permanent strength buff, has one of her skill attacks become stronger, has access to an enhanced version of one of the best dragon forms in the game, and can stay in dragon form for a long time? Sign me up! Sure, she's not the best adventurer in the game, or even the best in the flame element, but she is far from a terrible choice. She won me over with her comedy, and she won me over with her gameplay. And yeah, there will be many more adventurers that get added to the game in the future, so this list may very well change down the line. But when you have my favorite character in Dragalia Lost as an adventurer, and she plays pretty great, it's gonna be hard for Mim to lose her spot at number 1, unless the one that claims number 1 from Mim is another version of her. But until that day comes, Mim's initial foray into the adventurer scene will continue to be my favorite adventurer to play as in Dragalia Lost. I'm Kioski4013, and I hope I've at least sparked some interest for the game with this video. The gameplay is enjoyable, and the adventurers you play as are what help make it enjoyable. And there's plenty to love in Dragalia Lost. Yes, it can be a bit grindy at times, and yes, the harder content leaves little room for error to the point of it being a turnoff, but the devs continually make the game better, having made adjustments so that things like grinding and harder content are much more convenient and accessible for all players. And on top of the solid gameplay, the game is super generous. But with all the free stuff that's continually handed out, the events also giving great rewards, and again, the stories, lore, and characters are really good. The game is currently only Nintendo's 3rd most profitable mobile game, but I believe it's Nintendo's best mobile game endeavor to date. Now, let's hope they don't taint this precious game with a subscription pass just like the others.